This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen The Card Counter, a newish drama and/or thriller from director Paul Schrader, which follows a man who goes by the name of William Tell. Having spent 8 or so years in prison, Tell has learned how to count cards, and so he spends his days traveling between casinos, playing the odds, collecting winnings, and otherwise staying on the move. One day, he comes to meet a young man named Kirk, who recognizes Tell as a former member of the U.S. Army and one of the soldiers charged with human rights violations at Abu Ghraib. Feeling that they have a common enemy in the major in charge at the prison, Kirk asks Tell to help him in a revenge plan, feeling the major to be responsible for his father's PTSD, abusive behavior, and eventual suicide. Tell, on the other hand, has other plans in mind for Kirk. This may sound a bit sinister, but The Card Counter is a much more passive film that touches upon much greater themes than its title lets on. It's a much more worldly film in a sense, one which goes in a direction far removed from its main premise, and instead explores a sort of polar opposite to this. Tell isn't a character driven by anger against those who put him in prison or got away with their own actions, but instead it's a desire to escape from that past and lose himself, moving on and moving forward no matter what burden comes with it. It's a clear thematic conflict that's given a rather slow build-up over the film's runtime, with a bit more overt focus on Tell joining a poker ring to help pay off Kirk's debts, as well as his growing relationship with a new partner. That focus does come through as an extension of Tell's personal arc, and overall it's made pretty clear that The Card Counter is not a movie about card counting, but the man who counts cards. And even so, it's still not about that actual act, but what pushes him to move on, both in his daily life and from his past and any resentments he might still hold. There's a further element in Tell and Kirk's relationship that seems to illustrate a sort of generational divide between the two as well, with both having been affected by the same war, but in different manners, one more directly than the other. They both cope with its after effects as drifters, but there's a greater message about the burden of the trauma and the aspect of choosing to avenge those who were lost when you could live outside of the reach of those who hurt them or hurt you. More simply put, and without delving into spoilers, the story is a rather great example of a character study and thematic conflict placed within a somewhat thin but well-structured narrative. The technical elements of The Card Counter are a bit lighter, but with the primary focus being on its characters, that's not an unusual choice. The film sticks with a slow pacing with uncut takes, little camera movement, and light editing, which gives the film overall a rather dreamlike sense of existence, drifting through its settings in the same way that its main characters do. There are literal dream sequences, though, which are shot in a drastically different manner, and emphasize the confusion and chaos of the dream and the actions within. The two stylistic choices further pay off in a dramatic scene at the end of the film, which cements its overall feelings of revenge and violence by not actually showing it at all. Instead, we see the aftermath, making for a stark contrast to the relatively clean scenes beforehand. It's an effective statement, and overall, I feel that the movie is able to balance its surface-level story and conflict with its underlying themes very well, not simply through character action, but in its actual cinematic presentation. The Card Counter. Paul Schrader, 2021. 4.5 stars. I recommend giving it a watch for sure. That's all for me for now. If you like this review, leave it a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. As always, subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I will say that for a movie that's not actually about counting cards, I learned more about casino odds than I expected. Maybe I should have taken notes.